City directories are one of the most overlooked resources by genealogists. City directories have existed since the 1700s, long before the invention of the telephone. Unlike the census, which is taken every 10 years, the city directory is taken every year. Here's what we're going to go over today. Some reasons why you would want to use city directories, examples of how you can follow a family through time using city directories, and then more resources about city directories. As I mentioned before, city directories were issued every year, unlike the every 10-year census. If your family is from the country, you won't be able to use city directories. But if your ancestors lived in a city, be sure not to overlook city directories. City directories can serve as a substitute for the lost 1890 census. They give information such as street address, occupation, place of employment, and spouse. They can help you trace your ancestors' migration from one place to another. Knowing the place of residence of your ancestors makes it easier for you to find property and tax records. In addition to listing places of residence, city directory listings often list occupation and place of business. They also list the name of the spouse. Oftentimes, the city directory will list a wife as the widow of the husband in the year after he died, which helps you to pinpoint his year of death. Here's an example of a city directory for Mobile, Alabama for my maternal grandparents in 1940. I have a yellow box around my grandfather, Irvin F. Phillips, who was a welder in the shipyards during World War II. You can see my grandmother's name, Mitty. Just above their entry, you can see an Irma Phillips, who was listed as the widow of William. And then in the turquoise box above that, you can see Henry Phillips was married to Gertrude and was a foreman at Wood Auto Storage and Service Company. Now I'd like to show you how you can use the city directory to track your ancestors' migration and career path. And I'm going to use my paternal grandparents as the example. In 1928, my grandfather, Hayden L. Alford, was a stenographer for the Southern Railway System. He lived at 520 North 20th, Birmingham, Alabama. I went on Google Earth and captured an image of the building where he rented an apartment. By 1930, my grandfather was a secretary with the Southern Railway System. He lived in an apartment building at 608 North 21st Street, apartment 820. The apartment building is no longer standing and has been replaced by Legacy Arena, which is a venue for sporting events and concerts. By 1930, my grandfather was a secretary to the assistant traffic manager for Southern Railway System. He lived at the Ridgely Apartments, which is now the Tutwiler Hotel. The Ridgely was designed in 1913 by noted New York apartment building architect James E.R. Carpenter. I know that my grandparents married in 1932. This 1935 city directory listing for Memphis, Tennessee shows my grandparents' first apartment where they lived as newlyweds. My grandfather was a stenographer with Southern Railway System. They lived in a 2-bedroom, 1.5-bath luxury apartment home right in the heart of Midtown Memphis. You can see my grandmother's name, Kathleen T., listed beside his. My father was born to them in May of 1935. In 1938, when my father was 3 years old, they were still in Memphis, this time at 3757 Spotswood Avenue, and my grandfather was still a stenographer. By 1940, when my father was 5, my grandparents had relocated to Nashville, Tennessee, and they lived in this quaint little house at 1211 Norvell Avenue. My grandfather was a clerk for the Southern Railway System. In 1942, 1944, and 1946, the city directory listings show the family living at 1860 Old Government Street in Mobile, Alabama. At this time, my grandfather was chief clerk for Southern Railway System. By 1948, my grandfather was a commercial agent with Southern Railway System. They lived at 1103 22nd Avenue, Meridian, Mississippi, which is now a parking lot. When you're researching city directories, search for all the adult family members separately. As you can see here, my grandmother, Kathleen T. Alford, was listed in parentheses beside her husband, Hayden L., but she's also listed separately. And you can see that in 1950, she was an assistant librarian at the Meridian Public Library. In 1953, she was listed as a cataloger. In 1955, she was listed as a librarian. And then in 1956, 1958, and 1959, she was listed as an assistant reference librarian. And the picture on the slide is of the library where she worked. In 1953, 55, 56, 58, and 59, the city directory listings show the family living at 2517 33rd Avenue, Meridian, Mississippi. My grandfather's position was listed as solicitor. My father is listed just below as an engineer for Southern Railway. The home where they lived is obscured by trees, so you really can't get a clear view of what it looked like. The next year, in 1959, my grandfather was again listed as a commercial agent, and my father, who had been drafted into the Army by that time, had USA beside his name. I didn't find any more city directory listings for a while, so I used other records to continue tracing their migration. The Alabama Genealogical Society magazine, Volume 5, Number 3, in July 1971, is in the online collection of the Alabama Department of Archives and History. My grandmother was on the index committee of the Alabama Genealogical Society, and her address at 1540 Valley View Drive, Birmingham, Alabama, is listed in the officers directory. So that was another way of finding their address. And this is the house at 1540 Valley Drive, which I remember visiting as a young child. As my grandparents aged, they sold the house on Valley Drive and moved to Lancaster Apartments at 2028 Lancaster Road, still in Birmingham. I got this information from Family Oral History. They were living here when my grandmother passed away. I found another city directory listing for my grandfather. After my grandmother died, he moved to Jackson, Mississippi to live closer to his sisters, who took care of him until he died. He lived in an apartment at 987 East Northside Drive, Jackson, Mississippi. I don't know the exact date of this listing because the database doesn't tell us. As my grandfather's emphysema worsened, he gave up his apartment and moved in with his sisters at 1412 Bell Glade, Jackson, Mississippi. I remember visiting them there as a child. I hope this example of following my grandfather from 1928 to 1983 by combining city directories with other record types will inspire you to trace your city-dwelling ancestors using city directories. Now that I've shown you the example of following a family with city directories, I'm going to share with you resources for more information about city directories. The Family Search Wiki has an entry on city directories that will help you understand more about them. When I searched the Family Search catalog using city directories as a keyword, I got 20,026 results. So Family Search is a good place to find city directories. Citydirectories.com tells you repositories of city directories both online and offline. LDSgenealogy.com's directory of city directories contains information about where city directories are located. The listings are organized by state, county, and city. Both online and archive sources are included. They've got 91,215 U.S. city directories included in their listings. Cindy's List is always a good place to go for genealogy research topics. Cindy's List provides links to many U.S. city directories. The Digital Library of Georgia has digitized Albany city directories that you can view online. The Digital Library of Georgia also has city directories for other Georgia cities. The Online Historical Directories website's purpose is to provide links to all the online city directories in one place, organized by location and by date. The Library of Congress lists city directories that are available on microfilm for almost 700 American towns and states. The University of Leicester has an online collection of 689 digitized directories with at least one directory for every English and Welsh county for the 1850s, 1890s, and 1910s. The directories are searchable by name, place, and occupation. This same content is now available in Ancestry's UK city and county directories 1766 through 1946 database, which you can access with an Ancestry subscription or for free at the library using Ancestry Library Edition. The UK city directories can also be searched on JSTOR as one of the community collections. You can search Ancestry Library Edition's card catalog without any search terms and then use the filters on the left side of the page to narrow your results down to whatever category you're looking at. So this time I narrowed it down to directories and member lists. There are 2,204 directories and member lists within Ancestry and 1,307 city and area directories. Heritage Quest also gives you access to city directories, and you can access Heritage Quest free at the library as well. Chapter 8 of The Source, a guidebook to American genealogy, has the most comprehensive discussion that I've found on using directories for genealogical research, and we have that book here in the Northwest Library Genealogy Department. If you want to find videos on how to use city directories, search on YouTube. You will be surprised at how many how-to videos are available for you to use. Thank you for joining me in this class about using city directories for genealogy research. Be sure to join us next month as we look at top genealogy websites. Until then, happy researching!